Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, Inclusion and Access to Higher Education for Displaced and Vulnerable Persons. I'm your host, Michael Sisson. Charles Hahn is also with me. If you have any technical problems at all, either hearing or seeing any of the content presented today, go ahead and type that into the chat window or give us a private message via just highlighting our name and then selecting Start Private Chat. Otherwise, Melanie, Catherine, Annetta, and Stacy will be handling all of the content, and with that, I'll hand it directly off to Melanie Gottlieb.
Thank you, Michael. Good afternoon. I'm Melanie Gottlieb, Deputy Director of AACRAO, and I would like to welcome you to today's webinar presentation on the topic of inclusion and access to higher education for displaced and vulnerable persons. A quick note on logistics. There will be a time for Q&A at the end of the session. You can type your questions at any time during the presentation, and I will hold them off until the end during the Q&A. Let's get started. I will introduce today, we have Annetta Stroud, Associate Director of Training and Program Development for AACRAO, Catherine Miller, who is Global Education in Emergency Specialist for the Institute of International Education Peer Project, and Stacy Bernhardt, Senior Manager for Admissions, Recruitment, and Financial Aid at Florida International University Chapman Graduate School of Business. And with that, I will hand it off to Stacy.
So sorry. So thank you for joining us today. I'm just going to go over briefly what we're going to highlight within today's presentation, and we'll get down to the meat and potatoes of this. Today we'll be highlighting some innovative solutions through PEER and the Article 26 Backpack, university initiatives from Florida International University's Emergency Actions and the UALRM, and student initiatives such as Lost Generation at George Washington University and The Newest Americans by Rutgers University in Newark. And now I'm going to hand this over to Annetta.
Great. Thank you both, Melanie and Stacy, for the introduction to the webinar on inclusion and access. And thank all of you for taking the time out of your day to join us. As we venture further into the unknown territory of the policies of today's current administration, communication between higher education institutions, nonprofit organizations, non-governmental organizations, and local communities is and will continue to be absolutely key in supporting access and inclusion for these students who are directly affected by our current policies. Communication on best practices and initiatives, not only to support access to higher education, but also to support access to psychosocial, academic support networks, both within the campus setting and the larger community, is absolutely a role that U.S. higher education institutions have a duty to engage in. In order for us as higher education professionals to affect not only our campuses, but also the larger community and change the divisive rhetoric that now seems like normalcy, a larger conversation based around these initiatives needs to take place at all levels within our educational institutions and the larger community. The webinar, as Stacy mentioned, is going to highlight current set of initiatives that are taking place to support access for these vulnerable persons at the university level. We do hope that today's highlights will give you both inspiration to think out of the box and also tools to mobilize your student body, your faculty, and your administration in this incredibly important time. Our first set of initiatives that we would like to focus on are going to be an innovative initiative. Over the past 8 years, since the start of the Syrian conflict, we at the higher education level have seen some very interesting and innovative solutions and initiatives that help support education in emergencies and access to higher education for these displaced populations. In addition, and very importantly, these initiatives have brought the conversation to a larger audience, and we are really excited to share with you some details on both the IIE Peer Project and the Article 26 Backpack projects. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Catherine. Great, thank you very much. I appreciate that introduction. My name is Catherine, and as was mentioned, I'm the Global Education and Emergencies Specialist for the Institute of International Education, otherwise known as IIE. I want to start first. I realize there are different populations of vulnerable persons, but in what I will focus on today is actually displaced or refugee students. That has been the focus of IIE's most recent initiative, IIE Peer. So to put the context of the current global crisis and refugees in perspective, there are 65 million displaced people around the world, 50% of whom are children and youth. We are certainly at risk of having a lost generation when we do not provide these students and young people access to higher education. Typically, in a humanitarian response, always the focus has been on food, shelter, housing, health, medical, etc. However, finally, there's been a sea change as we've seen many universities and other entities pushing to put a humanitarian response on the map that really focuses on the need to provide education to displaced students or refugees. Even more encouraging is that for one of the first times in our history, higher education in emergencies is also on the map, in that finally young people, refugees themselves, universities, and other nonprofits and organizations, including governments, are saying it's a student's right to have access to higher education at the university level or what have you. So we're very encouraged. But recognizing the important role that universities play in education crises, we formed the Platform for Education in Emergencies Response. It is, if we could flip to the next slide. The Platform for Education and Emergency Response is an online clearinghouse in which there are approximately 600 opportunities listed for displaced students. In year one, we focused in on the Syrian crisis and students from the region of Syria that have been displaced by conflict in that region. However, we are currently expanding the database to include opportunities, and when I refer to opportunities, I mean scholarship opportunities for university, language learning, and online learning opportunities. It's a searchable, easily friendly database in which a student can go to one place, either from a refugee camp, from a city center, or wherever they live, in whichever country they live, and look for scholarships in the country in which they wish to study. We have several search filters, and soon we'll be expanding those opportunities to students, as I mentioned, beyond just Syria. 35% of the world's population of students have access to higher education, while only 1% of all refugees have access. We formed the Peer platform because we recognized, number one, we wanted to change these figures, and number two, being a refugee is disorienting in of itself, let alone a student or a displaced student who wishes to study at university but has never had the chance to interact with those who have already done such a thing, who may not know that opportunities for him or her exist, and may not know where to turn to look for those opportunities. When one tries a Google search, searching for scholarships for refugees, the results are in the millions. And so we wanted to help simplify the search process by creating this database that is easily searchable, as I mentioned. Currently, and I'll back to the Syrian crisis, we found at the start of the conflict there were over 200,000 displaced students, and now we believe there are approximately 600,000 displaced Syrian students at university age who are seeking higher education opportunities. It's a large number, and we're at risk of having a lost generation if we do not promote and expand initiatives such as ours and the many wonderful initiatives and scholarship opportunities that universities around the world are offering to displaced students. Next slide, please. If we could get to the timeline slide. Thank you. So here you'll see the timeline for initiative. In addition to an online clearinghouse and database, the Peer platform, Platform for Education and Emergencies Response, stands for. We're also about to unveil advising services. Again, we recognize the disorienting search process that takes place for many students when they seek to attend university. Many of us here in this webinar have had the opportunity to have mentors and others who have helped us through this process. But many refugees simply do not have that opportunity. So what we will be launching soon are virtual advising services in which a displaced student from any population, a refugee or displaced student, can gain access to an advisor who will help them select the right opportunities and the right scholarships to apply for. There'll be a great deal of skill building, essay writing help, and so forth. While other advising pilots, which we'll be unveiling this year, and one in which has started already in Bangkok, is to really help students make that connection from their application to an actual placement in university. And some of those cases will be working directly one-on-one with students to help them access higher education and then become placed and enroll at university. I won't go into too many details of other points of our initiative, but if you could just flip to the next slide. I won't read the quote, but I will conclude by saying that we recognize fully that once a student arrives at university, in many ways that's when some of the battles begin. But I think a first step is to give students the hope that they do have the opportunity. For many who we've met in our journey providing scholarships for displaced students at IIE have said that it wasn't until they met someone like them who had gone to university that they realized the same was possible for them as well. So we look forward to expanding this program. And next, I would like to turn it back over to Annetta, who will speak about a really unique initiative and approach to many of the issues that arise for students who seek to study at university. Thank you. Great. Thank you so much, Catherine. And I do just want to say, I think that it is very, very important what you touched upon, that it is so incredibly important for individuals who find themselves in a displaced situation to be able to talk to individuals who are coming from the university setting so that we can actually begin to give them some sort of semblance of hope and different types of opportunities for them to start thinking about what they can actually do with their future. And I do think that it's also very, very fun that it is called the Peer Project because, again, peer-to-peer learning, I think, is very important when we're working with university students. So thank you so much for that introduction to the IIE Peer Project and platform. Another innovative initiative that we want to highlight is the University of California, Davis Article 26 Backpack. The Article 26 Backpack is a human rights tool built to empower the academic mobility for refugee and vulnerable university students. Employing a secure cloud-based platform which is hosted by University of California, Davis, users of the Article 26 Backpack are actually able to create a digital portfolio, allowing them to highlight both their professional and academic achievements. In addition, through this secure portal, users of the platform, whom we call backpackers, are actually able to share different parts or all of the parts of their portfolio with an identified end user, whether it be an institute of higher education or a prospective employer. The Article 26 Backpack has been developed by the University of California, Davis in consortium with the American University of Beirut, as well as AACRAO, and is supported by the Ford Foundation. Now, the Article 26 Backpack is a unique tool as not only is it underpinned by the belief that all the content that is put and stored into the backpack is owned solely by the backpacker, so that it also it allows them to take ownership of the content of everything there and to share it explicitly with a specific end user. It also utilizes a near-to-peer network of trained backpack guides. These are usually going to be students from the local universities within the host countries. And the backpack guides can be deployed to assist in the field, the opening of backpacks when we are going to the camp settings. In addition to the backpack guides, another innovative aspect of the backpack is the ability of the backpacker to connect with other resources within the platform through what we call the compass. The compass is going to be the function that will include information for not only local opportunities that are offered by local NGOs in the region within the host countries, but also globally. For example, AIE's peer platform, which Catherine introduced to us. In addition to other possible opportunities that the Compass can showcase to the backpacker, this also allows the backpacker to apply for an assessment of their educational credentials that they may choose to send to a university admissions office or a potential employer. Now, this type of assessment is useful for admissions offices specifically to give them an overall view of what documentation the student does have in their possession that they are willing to share for the admissions or employment process. Now, the third really unique and innovative component of the Article 26 backpack is the My Story, My Future feature. Using techniques borrowed from humanities field of what we call digital storytelling, the Article 26 backpack actually gives young refugees a chance to record and upload an oral statement of purpose. Again, what we are calling My Story, My Future. This video of digital story is a critical part of the backpack as it helps to form a narrative framework that gives a human meaning to the backpacker's digital portfolio. And we're really excited to take the opportunity to introduce to you a backpacker whom we worked with in a refugee camp in the Central Bekaa Valley in Lebanon during our November field exercise. And with that, Mike, if you could start us with the video, that would be fantastic.
هذه قصتي وهذا مستقبلي. من سوريا، من ريف دمشق، من الغوطة الشرقية. نشأت في عائلة متعلمة. درست للمرحلة الثانوية في مدارس سوريا. دخلت جامعة دمشق، اختصاص كيمياء تطبيقية. درست للسنة الرابعة الفصل الثاني. بلشت الثورة في سوريا. اعتقلت لمدة 5 سنوات، وأنا بالسجن بلشت أدرس مستقبلي، أدرس إنه أنا بعد السجن. أول شيء كان عندي أمل كبير إنه أنا مستحيل ضل بالسجن، وإنه أنا طالع إن شاء الله، أو إنه أنا طالع. فالحمد لله رب العالمين طلعت من السجن، وأنا جوا عم فكر كنت إنه شو بدي أسوي بعد ما أطلع، عم بخطط لمستقبلي. طلعت مباشرة، جيت على لبنان. شفت إنه أنا مفصول من جامعتي، ما فيني أرجع كفي بالجامعة، فاتجهت باتجاه التعليم. لأنه وأنا عم فكر كنت إنه هو أفضل شيء لإعادة البناء، لإعادة الإعمار، إنه أنت تعلم جيل جديد وتبنيه من أول وجديد، لأنه هال7 سنين حرب دمرت كل شيء قاعدة تعليمية بسوريا. فاتجهت باتجاه جسور عم تعلم طلاب سوريين، مخيمات، كمان عندهم انقطاع عن المدرسة، مستويات مختلفة. بالإضافة لجسور أنا عم درس بمركز ثاني، مرحلة إعدادية، كمان باختصاصي. بينما بجسور هو اختصاص معلم صف، أنا عم بلش معه من أول وجديد، يعني من البداية. بينما بالمدرسة الثانية فأنا عم درس فيزياء وكيمياء للمرحلة الإعدادية، 7 8 9. اختصاصي بحبه كتير بحبه، لدرجة إنه بتصور كل شيء من حولي هو كيمياء، بتعامل معه على أساس كيمياء. بس في صعوبة كتير حتى يوم اجيت على لبنان انه ارجع اكمل اختصاصي، لانه ما معي اثبات انه انا بخلص هدول السنين بسوريا، بدهم يرجعوني من البداية. فوقفت شوي عند هالموضوع، وعم تابع بمجال تعليم الأطفال. فتعليم الأطفال بالنسبة لي هو كتير شيء حلو، يعني لأنه عم حس إنه أنا عم بإنجز شيء، عم قدم إنجاز، يعني إنه أنا عم علم هذا الولد اللي انقطع، ومو بس إنه ولد انقطع عن المدرسة، ولد عنده مشاكل نفسية بسبب الحرب، بسبب القصف، بسبب التهجير، بسبب حدا فقد من عائلته. فأنا يوم عم بتعامل مع هذا الشخص، فأنا عم بتعامل مع حالات خاصة استثنائية، مو مع أي طالب عنده الظروف المناسبة للتعلم. هدول الأطفال يعني عندهم أدنى الظروف لحتى يتعلم، فنحن عم نشتغل معهم لحتى نحصل أكبر درجة من التعليم بالنسبة لهم. هدفي المستقبلي، أنا حابب الهدف القريب يعني إنه خلص اختصاصي وحصل اختصاصي كامل. بس الهدف اللي أسمى من هيك إنه أنا حابب أرجع على سوريا وأرجع أطبق كل شيء تعلمته بلبنان من تقنيات تعليم، من وسائل، من كل الاختصاصات اللي تعلمتها بلبنان ارجع طبقها، لنرجع نعمر من جديد اول وجديد سوريا، نعمر هذا الجيل اللي ونبني هذا الجيل اللي تدمر دمار كامل بسبب الحرب. فكل شيء تعلمته هون وكل شيء عم اتعلمه وحابب اتعلم زياده زياده لحتى ارجع بسوريا وبلش وعمر من اول وجديد ونبني سوريا جديده ان شاء الله.
Great, thank you, Mike. And just to kind of finish up with the piece on the Article 26 backpack, we're very proud of these three components of the backpack, and especially My Story, My Future. We absolutely believe that being able to put a face and to humanize the stories of these individuals is going to be key when we're talking about best ways to affect inclusion within the larger community. And again, from the admissions perspective, how much more strong is having My Story, My Future to go along and support those academic and professional achievements. So again, thank you so much for having us introduce you to one of the components, My Story, My Future, from the backpack. And with that, I will turn it over to Catherine.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate this presentation, and I think you said something very important, a key word, which was the chance that students have, the chance that inclusion within an academic community is really critical, especially for displaced students or refugee students or at-risk students, because what it gives them is not only the chance to study and to advance their education, but also a sense of being something beyond just a displaced student or beyond just a refugee. Students often cite how grateful they are to simply be a student again, and that is one of the more important parts. So here to talk about a very important and impressive university initiative, the Florida International University at the Florida International University, is Stacy. Stacy, I'll turn the floor over to you.
That introduction, Catherine. My name is Stacy. I'm from Florida International University. We're located in Miami, Florida. First, I want to tell you a little bit about who we are and what our focus of these initiatives were. Florida International University is located in Miami. We have about 55,000 students. We are a primarily majority minority student population, with over 80% of our students being from a minority background. We're the first in the nation for awarding bachelor's and master's degrees to Hispanic students. More than half of our population are first generation, and more than half of our population are Pell Grant recipients. We're also very community-based. More than 3/4 of our population come from working households. I'm going to talk about two of our initiatives, one of which came after we experienced last year's hurricane season, and the other one is for our DACA students. So the hurricane season runs from June to November. And if you're not on the coast or near one of the primarily hurricane-heavy cities, this doesn't really impact you, except for some of those weird ones last year that went all the way up into the middle of the country. We see this frequently. Our institution is a hurricane shelter for special needs populations. And we also open as a general population shelter for evacuees from the Florida Keys. After the first hurricane hit South Florida last year, Hurricane Irma, FIU Strong was established. This was a helpline that was actually implemented and instituted by students or at the recommendation of students. They came to our directors and said, we need a way to be able to help take care of our people. FIU Strong provided direct links to our Counseling and Psychological Services Center, the FIU Foundation, which provides scholarship funding, our food pantry, the Office of Employee Assistance, and the TLC Brigade, which helps our faculty and staff. Anetta, if you can move to the next slide. After Hurricane Maria in September of 2017, this was the major one that hit Puerto Rico. As such, the Florida governor made a mandate to offer a student in-state tuition waiver for all students from Puerto Rico. This waiver was one of the things that initially helped us guide towards the full establishment of FIU Strong and making it as functioning as it is now. With that mandate, we, the FIU community, helped FIU students, faculty, and staff transfer from places within Puerto Rico to the U.S. We first and foremost helped our current students that were from Puerto Rico on a non-Florida resident basis get a waiver to pay for their Florida resident tuition. Because we had already paid for courses at this time, we offered a refund of that tuition portion, the out-of-state tuition portion, to these students to help with either living expenses or family funds. We wanted to ensure that they had money on hand to survive the rest of the semester. We then opened up our doors to allow students to come in from Puerto Rico. There was a governor mandate to allow students to transfer if we had space. We created a separate application for our students to process as a visiting student. We set up 2 mini terms. One of them was set just for our visiting students from Puerto Rico, and the other one was our traditional fall mini term. Students that were enrolling in this special visiting student process were offered a special orientation. We connected them with other students, faculty, and staff from Puerto Rico, and we had advisors on hand to evaluate whatever transcripts they had. The students were able to leave from that orientation with a full schedule for the 2 mini terms. They were also allowed to subsequently enroll in the spring term. The students now have the option to convert to degree seeking or stay as visiting, and we waived the application fee and deposit for these students. Every student coming from Puerto Rico as part of this received funding. The way that we did that was through grants from the Knight Foundation. We also received support from other organizations and universities. There was funding provided so that the students coming as visiting students had money for tuition, room and board, and any other assistance. There was options for the students to live on campus if necessary. And our students also were given every consideration that a regular student attending for that semester was. They had the option to attend our Panther Camp, which is an interactive weekend-long orientation. We also allowed them to join our full-time students for our bowl game. One of the things that we like to do around here is, in a crisis, as long as we're not breaking the law, we like to take initiative and ask for forgiveness later. Annette, can you move to the next slide, please? One other thing that we are very proud of is having a home for our DACA students. Because of state limitations, and we are a state institution, we partnered with the Dream.us. This provides scholarship funding to reduce the financial barrier. We actually also partner with the Hispanic Scholars Fund, which is a paid partnership for funding for both graduate and undergraduate students. This is available to both DACA and other eligible non-U.S. citizens. Our recruitment staff are fully versed on the needs of DACA students, and they serve as a resource to high school counselors in the local community and the local community at large. We also have an immigration and human rights clinic on campus for both our students, faculty, and staff. Part of being a state institution and partnering with the Dream.us, students become part of a protected person status once they have applied to our institution. We are one of the largest partners working with the Dream.us. This year, we actually had a student graduate in 4 years with a 4.0 GPA who was receiving a scholarship from the Dream.us. So it was very nice to see that these things do work and that there are opportunities for our students. And then I think I'm done.
Okay, great, Stacey. Thank you so much for sharing the great work that you and your members and staff and your students at Florida International University are doing to support our domestic displaced and vulnerable students. Another university initiative that we would like to introduce to you that you may not be familiar with is the University Alliance for Refugees and At-Risk Migrants, also called the UARRM. The University Alliance for Refugee and At-Risk Migrants is a group of researchers, practitioners, policymakers who are seeking to harness the potential of university communities for the empowerment and protection of refugees and at-risk migrants in the United States. The mandate of the UARRM centers on higher education and vocational training, again, for these populations, as well as threatened scholars, for example, scholars who are fleeing from conflict and or repression, and also, when relevant, in support of members of their families as well. The UARRM gathers vested parties across relevant sectors, and again, this is really including migrants, refugees, higher education institutions and associations, student associations, education think tank, legislators, local government, as well as educational institutions like Jesuit Services, for example, as well as the international community. Example, UN agencies, including UNITAR and UNESCO. The UARRM are pretty much articulated 3 primary goals that they have. The first one is to really look at and scope out and map out existing efforts that are underway in the United States by action area, and we'll speak to that in a moment. And again, it was decided that the mandate of ARM should actually only at this point focus on efforts and initiatives in the United States. The second goal is to share and disseminate this information with interested and vested parties both inside and outside of the Academy, and to help bring additional visibility to the current existing efforts that are ongoing within the United States. The third goal is going to look at taking action within these 3 different areas, and when possible, springboarding other promising initiatives, and really how to mobilize and take action within the areas of scope that are listed below. So within these action areas, they do include the following. So looking at offering more legal pathways to study, overcoming barriers to entry to higher educational institutions here in the United States, providing on-campus and in-community assistance and empowerment, advocacy and raising awareness, basically from the student to the president. Many times advocacy and awareness is really starting from the top down, but we're really wanting to look at the initiatives and raising awareness from the student body up to the top, to the presidential level. And then the 2 last areas are going to be the area of research as well as media and communications. How do we actually work with getting the message out there? So with the ARM, they are absolutely interested, first and foremost, with really trying to look at what within these areas of work, what is currently happening, what is the scope, what are institutions actually doing currently. It's very interesting, especially when speaking with individuals who represent an institution and talking about their institutional initiatives to support these populations. And I pose the question to you as being participants for this webinar. Do you know what initiatives are happening on your campus that are supporting access and inclusion for these populations? Many times it's really interesting because one institution may have 6 or 7 different initiatives happening all at the same time, and there's no cohesion. A lot of times they don't even know that there are other initiatives that they could be tapping into even on their own campuses. And so really one of the main goals of the UARRM is to start this scoping and mapping project. And we do have resources at the end of the presentation to hopefully garner your interest and possible thinking about what you are doing at your institutions and how you can further get involved to support something like the UARRM. And with that, I will go ahead and turn it back over to Stacy.
Thank you, Annetta, for telling us a little bit about the UARRM. Catherine is now going to speak to some student initiatives, such as the No Loss Generation at George Washington University and the newest American at Rutgers.
Great. Thank you very much, Stacy. So I just want to say a few words about a very important initiative that many of you may have heard of called the No Loss Generation. It was founded at George Washington University, and that is the arm of No Loss Generation that was founded by students. It's a student initiative, autonomous movement of student activists that was created to support the mission of the larger No Loss Generation initiative. And so backing this student initiative is the U.S. State Department, UNICEF, Mercy Corps, Save the Children, and World Vision. So what are the goals of No Loss Generation? First and foremost, No Loss Generation was founded to address the crisis inside Syria and Iraq, as well as the refugee hosting countries in the region, such as Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, and Turkey. And they do so through the following means. First and foremost, provide an overarching regional framework for key areas of response. No Loss Generation provides platform for joint advocacy on the priorities for children and youth. Another goal is to amplify the voices and perspectives of adolescents and youth. And very importantly, something very relevant to today's webinar is their efforts to link efforts in different sectors to achieve results on issues which cannot be addressed by one sector alone. And also combining immediate response for strategic investments for the future and mobilizing resources for sectors at risk of underfunding. While the focus has been on Syria and Iraq, lately the student-led No Loss Generation initiative has been expanding to include programming to assist those in Africa, Southeast Asia, and the Mediterranean crisis. One important note is that, like many initiatives, the student arm of No Loss Generation was something that was spearheaded by students, and as we've seen that, especially at Florida International University, similar efforts where students really came together and said, we want to do something. Obviously, that voice is even more powerful when, as mentioned in the No Loss Generation initiative, various sectors get together to help amplify those voices. So with that, I will turn it over to Annetta, who will just say a quick word about our next initiative.
Great. Thank you so much, Catherine, for the introduction to the No Loss Generation initiative. It's definitely something very interesting when we do start to look at the different initiatives on campus. What is our student body population doing? And if we're not familiar as higher education professionals and educators, if we're not familiar with some of the student-led groups, how can we start to really mobilize our campuses? And so this is a really, really great this is a very great example of another student-led initiative. Thank you for that. For our last highlight, we would like to introduce you to another student-led initiative. This is the Newest Americans. The Newest Americans is a multimedia collaboratory of students and faculty from the Department of Arts, Culture, and Media at Rutgers University, Newark. This is in partnership with 7 Photo and Talking Eyes Media, and it is produced by the Center for Migration and the Global City. Now, the Center for Migration and the Global City is actually an incubator for multidisciplinary scholarship, innovative pedagogy, and civic engagement that, again, is actually based on the campus of Rutgers. Newest American actually engages professional journalists, artists, media makers, alongside students and faculty in order to research, produce, and then in general to disseminate the stories that are defining our shifting natural culture through different ways, through digital magazines, through photo essays, podcasts, and also interactive media. In addition, the Newest Americans combine scholarly and journalistic research with art and civic engagement through project-based curriculum that actually provides students with the tools and training to document their own communities. And in turn, this supports the growth of socially inquisitive and self-reflective citizens of the future of the United States. So this is another really great example of another type of student-led initiative. And in this case, it is actually utilizing the different faculties that we do have on campus. And we would like to take the opportunity to share with you Hijabi World. Hijabi World is a short film featuring a small group of Muslim students at Rutgers who do observe the hijab and their personal messages to the community in which they live in. So thank you, Mike. If you want to go ahead and cue the video, that would be great.
There was a video that went viral all over social media where women wore hijab for a day, and suddenly their experiences overshadowed ours, and people are always saying Muslim women are not speaking up or they're oppressed. Well, it's because we never have a platform to speak, and whenever we do speak, oh, we gotta start over? I'm Egyptian and this is my sister.
I was born in Pakistan and raised in America.
Born and raised in the United States. I'm originally from Palestine.
My family's from America, from West Africa. I was born in Togo.
My mom is Irish. My dad is Egyptian and Turkish.
I was born in Indonesia, raised in Indonesia.
I originally started wearing the hijab when I was in 9th grade.
I started wearing hijab when I was in the 8th grade.
I was going to a Catholic school at the time, so I was one of 3 girls in the school who was wearing hijab.
When I first started wearing it, I was wearing it mainly because my friends were wearing it.
My mom did it, my sister did it, but I also felt a spiritual high and I felt like it was my time.
I'm the one who used hijab first before my mom.
And no, I'm not deprived or oppressed. No one forces me to wear hijab. And there are cases you might find that there are Muslim women that are forced to wear hijab, but that's not Islam whatsoever.
I'm telling you, this was my decision. My dad didn't force me. My parents did not force me.
I wear hijab first and foremost for God, but over the years, it's become part of my identity. It's shaped who I am right now.
It's become a part of my skin. It's become a part of who I am, and without it, I'm not me.
Being Muslim and being black and being a woman, it is a lot. It's a lot of minorities put into like one, and it is a lot to hold on my shoulders, because some days I wake up feeling so much stress, and sometimes you itch in your own skin.
Once I started learning about the feminist movement during my junior year in high school, that's when I actually started wearing hijab, like with my heart. Like I started wearing it intentionally or deliberately.
There's nothing that really limits me just because I wear hijab.
A lot of runners tend to be naked while they're running. Not naked, like sports bras, short shorts, and I felt it was going to be even more awkward running with a long sleeve shirt, long pants, and a headscarf to add on. And I remember my coach was like, "You still want to wear your shorts over that?" And I was like, "Yeah, I would like to still cover my butt, you know, like I get it's kind of weird for you, but this is something I've been doing and this is something I'm going to continue to do. I'm not going to change my personal comfort and my religious rules for a sport."
I think that my behavior has definitely changed after I wore hijab because I expected more for myself.
It's forced me to develop my character. It's forced me to develop my personality, to really understand and know myself better.
The most ridiculous thing I've been asked is like, "Oh, what's the color of your hair?" And I usually respond normally. I tell them the color of my hair. Or like, "Do you shower with that on?" And I'm like, "Yeah, totally. I shower with this on."
Somebody will come up to me like, "Wait, do you speak English?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I speak English."
"Does your dad know what your hair looks like?" "Yes, my dad knows what my hair looks like." Or like, "What about when you get married? Can your husband see your hair?" "Yes, my husband can see my hair. I'm not married." Oh, another one. "Do you ever get hot?" "Yes, guys, I do get hot. Like, it is hot out. I'm human. My face is melting currently. It's okay."
I used to work in New York in Whole Foods, and my coworkers had no idea what Islam was. They used to ask me questions like, "Do you want to go out after work and have a drink?" And I'm like, "No, I can't drink. I'm Muslim."
Oh, and at the DMV, I was trying to renew my license, and she was like, "You need a passport." I was like, "I have a passport." She's like, "The one from your country?" "No, not here." I was like, "It's an American passport. Don't worry."
It's really upsetting when you hear the term, "Go back to your country," or "You raghead," "You terrorist."
Given the rise of Islamophobia, I find myself being a lot more aware of what I'm doing, when I'm doing it. I'm very conscious of standing as far away from train platforms as possible. You know, you kind of feel the need to smile extra, to assure people, "Hey, I'm not a terrorist."
I always try to come back to the positive, and always trying to remember that there are always ignorant people, and it's not necessarily my job to teach them, but for every ignorant person, there's always a positive person. There's always a person who's willing to learn about you, who's willing to understand you.
I'm representing a religion. I'm representing girls who wear the scarf, girls in general, Muslims. I'm just showcasing so many different types of people that it makes me feel so like tiny in a world that's so big.
There's very few things I don't like about wearing my hijab. Like bad hair days, I have bad hijab days. This is one of them. My hair keeps going everywhere and I feel like it's everywhere, but hopefully it's not.
I rock my Islam, I rock my blackness, I rock my femininity with all the pride that I can because I love it. I love who I am. And if someone doesn't love the person that I'm representing, I wasn't born to please you. I was born to please God.
It would be a lot safer, a lot easier, a lot more convenient if I just took off my hijab. But I feel like once you do that, you remove yourself from the picture and you accept the fact or the idea that Muslim women don't belong in America or Muslim women who wear hijab aren't part of the American story, when in fact we are.
Great. Thank you again, Mike, for being able to queue up the videos for us. So again, we do hope that we were able to provide all of you with some really interesting examples of different types of initiatives that are actually happening now that are both institutional-based, university-based, and also student-led and initiated. And we do hope that we've provided you, again, with a little bit of food for thought and hopefully being able to start thinking about how you and your campus can really start to get more engaged. And in order to do that, we have provided you with some resources and some links to go ahead and provide you with some tools to actually take back and to think about back at your campus. And so with that, I will turn it back over to Melanie. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Annetta, and also thank you to Catherine and Stacy for sharing with us. I would like to invite you now to type in any questions you have for our presenters into the chat box. And while we are waiting for the questions to roll in, I have a few AACRAO update items to share. So first, we'd like to invite you to register for our next free AACRAO webinar titled Building and Maintaining a Successful Agent Pipeline. And that webinar is on June 5th at 2 p.m. Eastern and will be presented by our very own Stacy Bernhardt, who is here on this webinar today. Also, we would like to have you join us in Minneapolis for an AACRAO International 2-day intensive on international transfer credit, and that's on July 7th and 8th. After that, you might consider staying for the Technology and Transfer Conference from the 8th until the 10th. Tech and Transfer offers more than 90 sessions and presentations from experts who can help you integrate technology and transfer best practices into campus operations to support institutional and student success. On July 16th and 20th, AACRAO International will host, or 16th through 20th, AACRAO International will host the annual Summer Institute for International Admissions. Institute attendees will gain a thorough knowledge base of educational systems around the world through detailed hands-on practice evaluating authentic foreign credentials for the purposes of comparability and admissions eligibility. And finally, we are accepting applications through June 15th for the annual Baden-Württemberg Seminar, which is a unique professional development opportunity for study abroad officers, international student advisors, credential evaluators, admission officers, registrars, and others with responsibility for post-secondary level exchanges. Participants of the seminar gain a first-hand knowledge of the German educational system, German-American academic equivalencies, and student exchange opportunities between Germany and the U.S. Something special to note about the BW seminar is that participants or their institutions are responsible only for the cost of transportation to and from this year's host location of Constance, Germany. On-site costs for participants, and that includes lodging, most meals, and transportation for all excursions, are covered by the Ministry of Education in Baden-Württemberg. So again, we hope that you will apply for this exciting opportunity. All of these opportunities can be found at AACRAO.org, which I might mention received a major upgrade last week. So if you haven't visited lately, please check it out. So now I'm going to take a look and see if there are any questions for our presenters. And I do not see any questions just yet. If you have a question, and I see a couple of people are typing, please get that question into the chat box, and we will go ahead and share those with the presenters.
And
Lots
Melanie,
of people. Yes.
While we have individuals typing in some questions, just a quick plug for the No Loss Generation. If you think that you may possibly have students who would like to start an individual chapter on your campus, they can actually do that through what is called the Virtual Student Foreign Service Internship Program, sponsored by the State Department. The actual application deadlines are through, they start at July 2nd and they end on July 26th. And this is a really good way to actually get some of your students on campus engaged, not only with No Loss Generation, but also with programming that is, again, sponsored through the U.S. Department of State. So just a quick additional plug for that.
Thank you, Annetta. I have a couple of questions, and so let me start. Brittany asked if we could repeat the information about the June 5th event. That is a webinar event, and I've just posted the link into the chat box for you to take a look. And it is an AACRAO webinar, and it is titled Building and Maintaining a Successful Agent Pipeline. And it's at 2 p.m. Eastern on June 5th, and you can register through that link that I just posted. Another question from Elise Reevness had a question for, I would say, Stacy. Are the HSFNet scholarships only for FIU students?
No, but that is an organization that you have to pay a membership fee to be a part of. I don't know what the fee is, but we do join that as an institution.
Thank you, Stacy. Another question also from Elise, and I'm going to send that to Annetta. Is the Article 26 backpack used by graduate students versus undergraduate?
Great. Thank you, Elise, for the great question. Actually, the backpack can be used by anyone at any educational level, period. One of the goals of the backpack that we would like to see is that everyone should be able to have a backpack. For example, I have a backpack, Melanie has a backpack, and our colleagues within the backpack team also have backpacks. So this is really a tool that can be used throughout all levels of your educational experience.
Thank you, Annetta. And I'll take this question. Brittany's asking about a certificate of attendance. AACRAO does not do certificate of attendances for webinars at this point. We do record that people have attended, but we don't at this point have certificates of attendance. Certainly something we can think about if people are interested. Are there any other questions that we have? All right, it looks as though we may have answered all the questions. So once again, I would like to thank all of you for attending today's webinar. We appreciate you taking time out of your day to learn about all of these initiatives, and we hope that you will join us for future webinars. Be sure to visit the AACRAO website in order to see the opportunities that we have talked about today. And also the webinar recording will be available on the AACRAO website after today. So if you would like to share this webinar with a friend or colleague, you can do so by going and finding the recording on the website. We look forward to seeing you again at an upcoming event, and thank you very much for attending.